Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm the Shak, and in today's video I wanted to take a closer look at sketching portraits. It's been something I've been really looking forward to do. I plan to make a few sketches and yeah, I'm pretty excited. But first, I really needed to thank you guys since the last video practice sketching people was insane. Like the sub count was raising and the views, it got like 1k views. And then 5, 6, 7k, and at the end 10k views. And I was like, what? Like, that is crazy. So thank you really much for that. I really appreciate it. And I was like, man, I really need to do a new video. So here I am back. And now let's get straight into this. So before we start with the actual sketches, I decided to make a quick warm-up sketch as usual. So this was a good opportunity to make a 6-step guide on how to draw a head. There are many different ways on how you can draw a head. So I personally really prefer the Loomis method since it's a simple concept and quite easy to use with a bit of practice. And basically you start with a circle, turn that into a 3-dimensional sphere, cut off a bit from the side and divide the proportions into thirds. After you've done that, you can add things like the outline from the face, and I personally prefer to add the position of eyes, nose and mouth. You can just do that with really simple lines or a simple triangular shape, just that you kind of know where the nose is and from what perspective you're looking at. So that wraps up the quick explanation on how I usually draw a head, but I thought that I'm going to be making a separate video on how to draw a head with the Loomis method, and I can show you the individual steps since a lot of you guys ask for tutorials and I can't make them all in one video, but I'm really trying to make them or build them into videos that I'm making in the future. So yeah, I'll be making a tutorial for the head. But for now, let's just start with the actual portraits. As before, you can see that I'm using the Loomis method again. So the current portrait that I'm drawing right now got a tilted head and looks a bit towards the side, so here it's important to get the angle right. After the head construction, I make all the lines less visible with a kneaded eraser, and then I can just draw those lines over it, which you're gonna see at the end, or add other elements such as hair. And after having this whole head shape together, I can start shading. And with starting this important process with all of those hatchings, I decided to use pencils today, and I'm really trying to keep this in an artistic sketching style, and therefore I'm using a variety of pencil leads, from harder ones to really soft ones like 4B or even 8B for some of the darkest shades. So I'm really looking to get a rich contrast and get the lighting right, especially with pencils. A lot of the times I draw pretty light and you don't see a big difference between dark and light, which isn't a bad thing because you should actually always start with lighter parts and then get darker. But this time working with really soft pencil leads, I'm really trying to get this more of kind of like a harsh lighting that you really see the difference between dark and light. So I think this is it for the first portrait, and I'm pretty happy about it. I think I could really take over these values of the shadows, and I think that turned out fine. And with that, I think we'll just go on right with the second portrait. By starting the second portrait, I decided to draw it from the front view, and I could have done this for the first one since it's actually easier to draw from the front instead of a tilted head, but anyways, we're doing it now. So here we just really gotta look that we kind of draw symmetrically. It's because the head is just mirrored. And what I did was just checking some main lines if there are any mistakes, and actually by the eyes they really were a bit too high. And in general, I just think that eyes is a really hard part. I self find them really hard to place them at the right position without having to check, but I think it's totally worth it to take your time there and just nail the eyes, since I think it's one of the most important parts. You see with the eyes, and if you look at a portrait or at a picture, you kind of always straight look into the eyes and quickly realize if something's wrong with them. But yeah, the whole eye just already could be a whole thing by itself. After I drew the head, I started shading, making the shadow, and again I started with the main part around the eyes and just worked from there towards the outside. First I thought that I started way too dark, but just by continuing and trusting the process, it was getting better, and towards the end it luckily more and more got to the result that I was looking for. With having this portrait done, I really think this one turned out in this cool sketch style, and I think it turned out pretty well. So now moving on to the third portrait, and as before I'm using the same technique and just kept on sketching this way. So this time I have prepared the transparent paper with the base shape to check if I got the lines right, and I found it pretty useful to use this transparent paper. You can just really easily make a print or something, then you've kind of got a quick template to check, and you might want to use this as well. So with almost finishing this portrait, in terms of lighting, this one was a bit different to the other two portraits, since the image was pretty dark and it had a lot of shadows in the room, or the subject was in a dark surrounding, and therefore I had to make a lot of layers for the hatching, so the whole face gets more darker, and that made it kind of look like the most realistic out of the other two, since they just had simple lines, and here I just had to make layer over layer. But I'm actually pretty happy with the result and how it turned out. With having this portrait finished, this was kind of the final one for today, but since the page still looked unfinished with just one portrait, I added another one off camera to really fill these two pages with 4 portraits and have a nice conclusion. And with that being said, I really hope that you enjoyed watching the video. Maybe you want to leave your opinion, and I really hope to see you again back on this channel, and I hope you enjoy the end results.